So, hi, my name is Hannah, and this is Abdullah, and we're so excited to talk about our Slack bot today. So, this is a project that we were working on for the past few months throughout the last semester, and we were on the same team, and we wanted to just share our whole process going into it. And yes, let's get started with some introductions. So, I'm currently in my second year of computer engineering at the University of Alberta. And my favorite languages at the moment are Python and JavaScript. And when I'm not doing any schoolwork or any programming, I like to go for runs and to read, especially now since we're all stuck inside. And now for Abdullah.
Hi everyone. As you might already know, my name is Abdullah. I am a third year computer science student at the University of Alberta. My favorite languages are Python, JavaScript, and Mandarin. That's what I'm currently learning. And as a hobby, I'm also a food photographer. If you want, you can take a look at some of the photos I've taken. Hope you like them.
Awesome.
So a bit more about the team that we worked on to develop the Slack bot for. It's Ada's team. If you aren't aware of Ada's team already, Ada's team is a computer science student group in the University of Alberta, and essentially their whole role is to help onboard new university students into into computer science and help get them networked with industry professionals. And what we did for them is in their Slack workspace, we created a Slack onboarding bot that could help ease that process and help get new students acclimated to Ada's team's ecosystem.
Awesome.
Right. And for our table of contents, just so you'll get a general idea of what we will be going through for this presentation, it's mainly going to be our problem statement and solution, and then what we decided to use after that. And then for our teamwork and production, we'll go into how we implemented. And then finally, we'll test and show you our thinking with the user experience.
All right, so just to define the problem, I'm going to set the stage. So if you want to imagine that you're back in school and you just joined Ada's team, and you just got added to the new Slack workspace, but you don't really know what Slack is. You're so confused, like you don't know what a channel is, you don't know what workspace is, and you don't want to bother anybody. Also, you're trying to look through the old messages, but you can't see them because they're not saved anymore. That's a bunch of problems that you're going to have with Slack that the Slack bot is going to help. So the problems that we have with Slack is that, if you've never used something like Discord or a similar platform, it might be a bit confusing to first get used to it. Also, the free Slack plan that most people are going to be using, it's going to stop saving messages after 10,000 of them per workspace. So any important information that's in there, you're not going to have anymore. Also, you don't want to be bothering a bunch of people the entire day being like, "Hey, how do you use this?" and whatever. And so with that, that's where our bot comes in. So you can use slash commands at any point in the day to have better access to certain resources, and you don't have to really bother anybody. And also, if there's certain information that you want to get from the bot, you can have that accessible to you anytime.
And you might be asking, how is this possible? So we'll go over the technologies we used. First off, ngrok and Axios. If you aren't familiar with them, they're local development servers in your local machine that can help launch develop projects so you can test them on your own machine. Secondly, Bolt.js, really important. It's a framework that we use to help build Slack apps using JavaScript. After that, there's Lodash. As you can see, it's a bit of a utility belt. It's a great library that optimizes data structures and other common tools programmers might need when developing in JavaScript. After that, we use Jest for testing, and then NodeMon for restarting our applications after we saved every time. and glitch was used for our final deployment. And at the end of it, it was a JavaScript node project, and we managed the packages with npm.
So for the requirements of the bot, on our team, we were given certain requirements by the ADAS team execs, but we were also left to brainstorm some more and go more into detail. So with the minimum viable product sort of requirements, what we would need was that the bot should be able to respond to user commands at any time. It should be always accessible, and it should also know when certain people are admins in a workspace, and also there should be a way to retrieve certain data and store it, and it should always be online. And then some other requirements we came up with was that once somebody joined a workspace, they would get a welcome message from the bot, and the bot would have messaging capabilities that were private or public, and they should also be able to change certain roles from admin to just a regular user and vice versa.
And your next question is probably, or what framework was used? So we'll be going into that. So our options for Slack bots are somewhat limited. You have the official Slack web API, which is Slack's API for communicating with any Slack application or Slack bot. And then after that, there's a Slack bots library. It's a JavaScript library for building Slack bots. So although the issue with the first two is essentially that there is vague or little documentation, and we found that we kept getting stuck and we weren't really going anywhere until we found Bolt.js. This was the light at the end of our tunnel. It's a functional framework that has Bolt.js is a functional framework that has optimized functions for working with the Slack web API. Really easy to use, great documentation, can't recommend it enough. Right. And then a bit more into how we produce and functioned as a team, specifically the sprint and agile methodologies. So we were a team of 5 with 3 software developers, 1 designer, and 1 project manager. We essentially, at the very beginning, we created a long list of a product backlog, basically from the list of requirements that we mentioned earlier. And then in each of our sprints, we would just have a sprint backlog and sprint through those. I think it was really helpful to have agile methodologies specifically for our stand-ups that we had fairly often. Whenever we really got stuck in problems, which is fairly often, we could talk about it and get through them pretty quickly.
All right, so now I'm going to talk a bit about the user experience. So I was the one designer on that team, so I was really tasked with looking at what you can do with Slack bots, especially with certain limitations from Slack. So let's get into that. So the first thing I did was make a user flow diagram. So this kind of goes into the commands that the user is going to use, as well as certain events and what the bot is going to do. And for example, like the FAQ command here, so the user is going to enter that slash command in that workspace, and the bot is going to respond with a URL that leads them to the FAQ page for on the ADAS team website. And then it's just the user's job to click on that and see if they can find whatever they need. So having this all kind of mapped out really helped. And another really cool part of the user experience with Slack is that they have these things called blocks. So it allows you to personalize certain interactions between the bot and the user. And you can get these little blocks. So like this input field, there's buttons and these like radio buttons in this menu. So all of these you can build with the UI block builder. So that's like another website on the Slack website, and that allows you to build these like blocks that is going to transfer to these JSON objects that you're going to put into your actual code. So for example, with this one, so you go to that website, the block UI builder, and you pick out the input field as well as like the selection block. And then on the right side, it's going to provide you with the exact JSON object that you're going to put inside of your code later on so that you can have messages with these inside. So just to demo a basic command. So here what I did was I did the slash command FAQ and I press enter, and immediately the bot responded with this message that was only visible to me. So a bit of the code for that. So what you have to do when you first make a Slack bot is you have to go to the Slack API website and initialize it so that they can give you certain information that you have to put into your code for it to work at all. And so we did that in index.js, and then underneath that is where you initialize your commands. So again, you have to go back to the Slack API website and then enter each command manually. And for that, you also have to enter a request URL. So when you do that, all the information about somebody calling this command is going to go to that URL so that you can actually do what you want with it within your code. So then later on, we also have this other JavaScript file with specifically just for the FAQ command. So what's kind of happening here is that they make that request to that URL, and from there the call gets acknowledged, and then the bot knows who called that command and from what channel. And then from there, the bot is able to post that message and send that to the user. And the block that was used is like right here. Yeah. And then next is modals. It's another surface on Slack. So it's like this, right? Oh, hold on. So it's like this extra window that comes up here for certain commands. And you can see that there's some buttons here as well. So it just adds that extra layer of customization to that certain command. So again, we have this line in the main file to initialize that command. And then we had to do sort of the same thing as the FAQ command, but then, so since this one has buttons, you actually have to go to another section in the Slack API website where you provide a different, or it's actually the same URL, but this is for requests regarding if the person clicked the button in the previous modal or not, and information about that. So then in this other file, for this specific command for updating roles, so you see that the command gets acknowledged, and then next they check if the person that called that command is actually an admin in that channel, and if they are, they open up this window, they open up the modal, and then you can see everything that's in there. Yeah. And then the last part of the user experience is just that with Slack bots, you can always see that they're online, and you can see that with this like green dot right here. So it's just a sign that's always available. And then I also made this profile picture that just adds another bit of friendliness. Yeah, so now for a demo, I'm going to pass it off to Abdullah. So
Hey,
I'm going to stop sharing my
sounds
screen.
good. All right, so I'm going to take over sharing my screen. I'm not sure. Just give me a thumbs up when you can see it, Hannah.
Yes.
Awesome. so, uh, so I guess we will set the scene. So to start off, we're going to start off with creating a new channel. So we're going to create a channel. We're going to call it is team -3. So the whole point of the channel is so we can show you what it's like for a new university student to enter the ADIS team workspace. So we're going to create that workspace. we're only going to add Hannah. Hi, Hannah. And we're going to go ahead. There we go. So there we go. We'll full screen that. Let me know if it's easily viewable or if I need to zoom in at all. I'm not sure how I can zoom in, but I hope everyone can read that. So it's going to start off as a new student. It's going to welcome the new student. It's going to welcome them to the ADIS team, give them a bit of information about what ADIS team is about. So the next thing you might ask is, okay, I know what this workspace is, but what does ADIS team really do? So you can go ahead and give a frequently asked question. Use the frequently asked questions command with /FAQ. And by entering it, it will give you a link to the frequently asked questions and it'll open to ADIS team right there. Right. And then after that, now that you know what ADIS team's about, what they do, what their role is, now you might be asking, what are some resources I can access here? So we have a command for resources, so /resources. And in this specific workspace, there is the ADIS team website, the Instagram, the LinkedIn, the Facebook, and ADIS team wiki home. So now you get a more encompassing idea of what ADIS team is about, where you can make new friends. You might be asking, what are the roles? Like who does what in ADIS team? So you can check that out, /roles. So it gives you a bit more information about the execs and about ADIS constitution. And if an administrator later on wants to add an additional role, we've added that functionality, which we will show you later, which I think is an important transition to now that we've come to the end of what a student might be using ADIS team for, we can search who are the administrators of this to ensure that the administrators will have only admin access to show our multi-user authentication. So far, for the administrators of this current workspace, it's Hannah, a few of our other developers, and Abdullah, which is me. So now we're going to transition to how does an administrator access this workspace? So for example, we're going to check out the workspace rules. In this case, here are all the rules. If you would like to update the workspace rules, you can go ahead and do /update workspace rules. Excuse me. And then you can go ahead, create a new rule. Let's be friendly. There we go. Oh, whoops, sorry, that's the number of the rule, my bad. And this is the rule, be friendly. We're gonna go ahead and you'll just get a little confirmation from the Slack bot. And then once we go ahead and check the workspace rules again, there we go, we'll see be friendly right there. But let's say I don't like how that was worded. I wanted that to be worded better. So you can go ahead and update the workspace rules again. And we can, instead of adding a new item, we can replace the rule. And since it was the first rule, we know it's number 1. And then we can add the new rule and be nice. Submit. And we just go ahead and check that again. So yeah, it's been updated. As you can see, it might be a little bit of a work in progress. All right, so after that, after replacing the rules, an administrator might also want to update the roles. So as we can see, the roles as of now, there's not a specific role or a guiding role for this workspace. So if we might want to add a role, we can do /update roles. And this is an example of our modals from before. You did see it with the previous example, but this just shows the interactivity, and the modals are mainly only for administrator access. So we first ensure that this user is an administrator, and then they have access to this functionality. So I would like to add a new role, so I'll click that. Let's see, let's add the executive role. And for an executive, I'd be bossy. Submit that. And then you'll just get a little confirmation notification, and then we will check the roles. Here we go. So it's the exact same constitution. And then finally, an executive, be bossy. And then if we want to go ahead and delete that, since as an executive, you've made some other executives mad for saying be bossy, go ahead and delete that. And it's the first role to be deleted, and it will be deleted. Oh, it was supposed to be deleted. All right, thank you so much for staying with me for that demonstration. And that will be the end of the demonstration. And we can go to our links. So these are all the links. We can share this presentation with the hosts of ExchangeJS and Ruby. And these are some of the important links we used for the APIs, the libraries, and finally our GitHub repository. If anyone wants to see how we created the Slack app, totally open for you to check out. And there's a little bit about us. Feel free to message us and connect with us on LinkedIn, or give us an email if you have any questions about this afterwards. And we would love to transition to a question and answer period.
Awesome. Thank you, Hannah and Abdullah. We do have some questions from the Q&A section. So if anyone has any more, please do ask them in the chat and I will shuttle them to the presenters here. So the first question is from Matt. He asks, can a Slack bot just monitor every single message on every channel, or is it just trigger command based?
So I guess it's a follow-up question. A Slack bot is able to do both. It's whichever one you choose for the functionality to give it. In our case, it was triggered by the slash command. And after getting a slash command and then a proper command, then it would be triggered.
Cool. Another question from Eddie. Have you tested how complete newbies can discover the slash commands? Like, can a first year CS discover these commands pretty easily?
Yeah, Hannah, do you want to take this one?
Yeah, so I think the welcome message when they first join is like the main goal of that message is to really like get them acquainted with the commands. Also, like if they know what a slash command is and you like type in slash, you can like it like autofills to the ones that are available for the bot. But if Abdullah wants to speak more on that as well.
Right, yeah, so that was something that can be easily fixed with with the welcome message, just adding the list of the commands.
Cool. I've got a question myself. Were there any limitations of the tools that you decided to use at the beginning that didn't really show up until later on in the project, and you might have had to change your decisions based on that?
I'm trying to think.
I have something to say about this, specifically for the Slack web API and the Slack bots library. When we first started using them, it was just a challenge to set up, really, and like with the lack of documentation, we were just really stuck and really slow. And then once we swapped over to Slack or the Bolt.js library, it was just a lot smoother. And yeah, that's what I have to say. Do you have anything to add to that?
Yeah, so like I think in the presentation it makes us seem like we knew that Bolt was going to be the best from the beginning, but we actually spent like a fair amount of time deciding, well, not even deciding. It was like a lot of trial and error until we finally got to like this really easy tutorial with Bolt, and we were like, yes, let's use this instead.
Yeah, definitely. That's most of where our emphasis came from. It came from all the pain of not using Bolt and finding something that was nice.
Cool. This is a little bit out of order, but there is a follow-up question about Bolt. Would you use Bolt.js again?
Definitely, yeah. Hands down.
And with Bolt, how did you handle the hosting?
Would you like to answer that, Hannah?
I think, well, it's everything that like you saw, all the commands, all the URLs have been glitch. And we also experimented a bit with Heroku, but I think, is there anything you want to add?
I mean, to my understanding, it may be limited, but I believe Glitch just essentially launched our GitHub repo to like a usable platform, and then that made the bot become online, and that was hosting the bot. I'm not sure if I fully understand the question.
Gotcha. Well, I mean, that sounds a lot like how you would deploy a Heroku app. I mean, you include a file
Yeah,
that's basically some basic instructions on how it's run, and then just throw it up, and it kind of knows what to do. It's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah, I've never used Glitch myself. We do have a question about the project management. Can you give an example of how your strategy helped you achieve your goals as far as project management goes?
Yeah, so our project manager, Nicole, it was like a lot of our communication was every week or so, we would have like an hour or so meeting. And then between that, it would be like me meeting up with Abdullah or like one-on-ones more. And with that, there was a lot of communication, a lot of being like, hey, do you know how to do this? I don't. Do you want to work on it together? And with that, having that communication between all of us was really helpful for me. If there's anything you want to add.
Yeah, specifically for like the agile methodology, I think like having like on top of like the daily stand-ups, um, specifically like what Hannah said, like pair programming really excelled all of us further because I feel like as an individual, when you hit a bump, it can look like a wall, but when you talk through it with another person, it ends up becoming more of a bump than an actual wall. Hmm.
Mhm.
Awesome. So you spoke on this a little bit, so I don't want to answer for you, but it sounds like I might know already. But what was it like working with the team?
Yeah, honestly, I had not heard about Agile at all until this team. And it was like it was really interesting to learn about that, and also now I can bring it up with tech folk and be like, "Hey, do you know what this is?" And they're always like, "Yeah, we use this for our work." And I always thought it was really cool, and just working on a team in general, like again, like any sort of problems I would have, I could just ask somebody else in the team and be like, "Hey, I don't know how to do this," and usually somebody else would, and that was always great.
Yeah, yeah. One thing that really stood out for me as a great experience is I feel like for most of my university courses, it's always do it yourself, do it yourself, do it yourself. Don't talk to anyone or else like it's the end of the world. Yeah, being able to collaborate and like pick apart everyone else's thoughts and their ideas really like it just helps so much compared to like everything I've experienced before, where it's really frowned upon sharing thoughts. Not necessarily sharing thoughts, but sharing code. But like thoughts can only go so far, and seeing code helps so much.
Sure.
Like just seeing those ideas being applied really helps enforce it a lot more for me personally. So
Cool.
yeah,
So
being in a team is great.
we've heard a lot about the positive side of working on a team, but what were the challenges that you came up against?
Yeah, so again, like deciding on our framework, um, there was a lot of like uh, at that point we weren't communicating as much, so I think it was a lot of like, oh, one person went off and tried this one, and then the next one would try a different framework, and then we had to like pick ourselves up and gather ourselves, and then finally decide on one to keep going with because it just like wasn't really working until then.
Mhm. Yeah, I have nothing to add. I think that sums it up pretty well.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that analysis paralysis definitely sounds familiar with working on a team.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, a bit of a follow-up question about testing with early users. Did you actually have an opportunity to present the sort of onboarding experience to first-year students and see how they actually reacted to the way it was designed?
We have not, but that is a great idea. We could totally do that.
Yeah, I think that's definitely that's a decision for A this team because essentially as developers we develop the product for the executives, and that's a decision for the executives whether they would like to continue adding more function before releasing it and getting like more into the beta side of the application and actually testing it. I do feel that there's always more functionalities to add. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah, if there aren't any further questions, do you have anything else to add before we go back to the tables for a little bit?
I have nothing else to add. How about you, Hannah? I just want to thank everyone for this experience. It was really great. Yeah.
Well,
I'd love to get to know and talk to everyone.
Awesome. So we will take a short break. You can get up and stretch your legs for about 15 minutes or chat at the tables if you would like. We will be back in about at about 7:25 for the next talk. See you then.
Awesome.